Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined, as usual, by my guy, Mark Ostrander, and back in the saddle, filling in, keeping us hip with the young demographic since Grant Turner can't make it, is our good friend Cody Goodwin, who is now in Des Moines, but we still claim him. He is a native Missourian, Mark. So you can't. It's not 2-on-1 as usual today on Iowa versus Missouri. Cody G, what's good, man? Thanks for joining.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Marco, what's the good word?
I don't even need Cody to lift Iowa right now. I'm sorry.
No, that is fair.
I can do it all myself, David. I'm just what it is.
It is the summer of Iowa. I feel like it is the summer of Iowa. Yeah. Let's start there. We'll start there. We talked about how well Iowa, and I'm sure there's some infighting in that state like there is in the other 49. I'm sure everybody doesn't sing from the same hymnal and sing Kumbaya. But Mark, I'll start with you. You are the elder statesman in the group, and I say that respectfully. You've seen a lot of wrestling in Iowa. To see what Iowa's done, well, first of all, they won the cadet girls. And just to back up a second, my father was on the girls' staff, and Missouri took second, almost won that sucker. Came down to I think the second to last match. So quick shout out to Missouri, but they win the cadet girls. They crush in junior boys. They dominated junior freestyle duels. We talked about the coordination of getting the best kids to actually wrestle. But Mark, I mean, let me just ask, why do you think it's gone this way?
David, I'm really not sure. I just think Iowa's gotten so much better because of all the clubs that they've developed within the state. Kids they're training year round now. Back when I was young, we didn't train year round. We were in 4 different sports. So, every 3 months we'd switch sports, and that's all we concentrated on. These kids have really focused on wrestling and freestyle. Seabolt, Fellers, McClintock, that group over there with Seabolt's crew has done a phenomenal job. And I've talked to a few of those guys, and they call me coach, and I'm thinking, I don't even think I deserve that title anymore because I've watched what you guys have done. It's amazing.
They can be coached too, and you can still be coached.
I know that, but it's amazing to see the standard that they've reached in such a short amount of time. And I know they've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now, but to really watch the young kids now get into the junior division and see what they've done. And I don't know about you, Cody, but I'm absolutely amazed by it because they went from being mid-tier 2, kind of high in the two tier for, I'd say, states and wrestling. Now they're right at the top of tier 1. So give them all the credit in the world.
Yeah, Cody, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think a large chunk of it is the clubs, and Seabolt is kind of at the front of that pack with what he's been able to do. Just the last few years alone, they've won. They've had kids come out of that club win multiple, individual national titles. They've put multiple kids on world teams. Nate Jesseroga won a bronze medal at the cadet level last year. Ben Keeter is a Seabolt kid. He's on the junior world team this year. And that I think Seabolt's push has kind of raised the level of the rest of the state. Like every other club is chasing what Seabolt is doing. So you got Big Game Wrestling Club. They've had a bunch of All-Americans. You've got another club here in the Des Moines Metro, Moan Wrestling Academy, led by TJ Moan, who was on the junior freestyle team, the junior freestyle dual team in 2005 when Iowa last won it before they won the last 2. He had a handful of All-Americans this week in both freestyle and Greco with guys like Connor Pfizer and Max Riggins. And then, there's another club coming up that's got a talented group of younger guys. And we've already seen a few of them, Immortal Athletics. They're kind of based up near Cedar Falls. And, they kind of collect all the kids up there. I mean, there's just a lot of really good clubs and really good wrestlers all over the state. And that's kind of the crux of it. And everybody's just kind of following each other, chasing each other. Seabolt kind of set the pace and everybody has followed along, and kind of, what we're seeing now is maybe some of the best wrestling Iowa has ever had, at least at the high school level. It's been insane to watch.
Yeah, I definitely want to give credit, well, you guys already did, to Seabolt and that crew. TJ Moan is a great shout out blast from the past. He went to Nyack, and Aaron Senzi beat him in the semis the year. Aaron Senzi then beat Greenwald from Iowa Central in the final. So that's a nice, pleasant memory for me. I think that one of the things, there are certain states, I think a massive understatement is wrestling is important in the state of Iowa, right? Like it's important. It matters. I mean, I went to Iowa State, and one of the reasons I went was back then, I don't know if it's still the case, but on Iowa Public TV, they did the duels. And, you at 10 o'clock at night, like, hey, on the highlights, like, hey, number 1 ranked Mark Ostrander took on number 2 Cody Goodwin tonight. Here are the highlights. I mean, and I think it has a lot to do with that there's no professional sports teams there. Like the colleges are the pros there. Plus, just wrestling is a blue-collar sport. Iowa's a blue-collar state. I say that in the most complimentary way possible, but it's a rural versus urban, all these different things. But like you mentioned big game, let's give Dylan Carew a shout out, specifically by name. And I think just in general, like when you watch the wrestling and you guys, I'm curious if you see it the same way. It's just better. Like I wrestled in this tournament as a cadet and placed in it 4 times and was lucky enough to win it once. And I, arrogantly, I think I'd still be good now because I would have better coaching and have gotten better. Like John Smith tried to tell me one time the kids in college are better than he was now. And I'm like, A, no. And B, you would have gotten better too. But when you have, like the guys that we're talking about that are doing great in Iowa, they didn't have like these amazing college careers. They were good. Don't get me wrong. Seabolt was a legend in high school, but didn't have the college career that matched up to his high school career. But like, you look at like a Jared Lawrence and a Brandon Paulson at Pinnacle, you look at like the Askrens at Askren Wrestling Academy, and there's 30, 40 other places like this across the country, like Daniel Cormier is coaching high school. Look at Cody Merrill this week. These kind of things. Like on the female side, look what Mario Flores is doing at Rev in Michigan. Like the number of stop signs that squad collected this week was unbelievable. I think it's 2 things. I think really good coaches are coaching at the club level now. It used to be like you had to be a college coach. And I think it's always follow the money. You can make money now as a club coach. I don't think Seabolt's like working at Home Depot part-time, to make ends meet. Like I don't think a lot, but that used to, hell, our Olympians used to do that, be working at Lowe's and Home Depot 20 hours a week. So you guys are around these clubs. We have kids that have wrestled with us that are going to these clubs. How much, Cody, I'll start with you. How much do you think the economics of it that are allowing better coaches so these kids can get better coaching at a much younger level? How important do you think the economics of all this are?
Yeah, that's important. I know Seabolt pulls in kids from all over the state. His club is based in, well, he's got 2 locations now. He recently just expanded to Iowa City, but his primary location is in Jefferson, Iowa, which is about an hour west of Ames, Des Moines, kind of in between those 2. But he has kids that he coaches from Bettendorf on the far side, way over by the Mississippi River. He's got kids from Des Moines. He's got kids from the Waverly area. He's got kids from Fort Dodge. He's got kids from Iowa City. That's those kids make the drive, and those parents make the investment and the commitment to their kids to go get specific training from Siebold. And Big Game does that too. Like, he's based in North Liberty, Carew's club, and those kids will come in from Bettendorf, from Des Moines, from, Iowa City's right there, from, Waverly, from Cedar Falls, all that, Cedar Rapids, all that stuff. Like, those, there's a commitment to the kids, which obviously the economics of the thing is going to benefit the coaches. I know TJ Siebold, that's all he does. All he does is coach wrestling. All he does is, maintain his facility. He's got a family. They moved to Jefferson. So I know that they're very involved in that community. Carew, I know, runs his landscaping business. Cruz Aris from Immortal, I know he works with UNI in various capacities. Which is where, that's where they practice, right? So it's nice to kind of have that built-in room. TJ Moan, they practice right out of Simpson, and he pulls kids from all over the Des Moines metro, and his reach is growing quite a bit. That probably helps, but I think it's more just, the collective, because we talk about these clubs, like, Iowa had this statewide camp in Cedar Rapids for the boys, and the girls had a similar statewide camp in Indianola down at Simpson. And, I attended that camp for quite a few days. I attended both camps, and it's not just that these clubs are doing really well. It's just like, as a state, collectively, all of these coaches come together for the kids and to get them ready, boys and girls. Coaches from all these different clubs, from all different schools all around the state, kind of came together to help these kids in preparation for this week. So that obviously helps when you've got both Siebold and, Carew and Cruz and TJ Moan and all these guys helping one or two or three kids that may not even be their own, right? That, I think, obviously has helped quite a bit. We saw it at the duels when, TJ and Morningstar helped with the freestyle guys, and Dylan Carew, who's Iowa USA's head Greco coach, he kind of took the reins for that team, and they miraculously somehow won that tournament. It's been a collective effort, not just from the clubs doing their own thing, but the entire state coming together when it comes to these big competitions, and we're seeing the results.
And Mark, you're the godfather up there. Nothing big happens without people running it through you. But you see this. No, you do hear a lot of things. How do you see it with just the clubs and this whole thing? Because then I want to we've been very Iowa centric, and deservedly so, but I want to talk about some other storylines from Fargo after we talk about this.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of the coaches, and, after you compliment them so many times, and I've asked, what's the secret? And because I'm still wanting to learn, obviously, that's just what you do when you're in this sport. You want to learn until you can't learn anymore. So basically, what a couple of them told me was, once you let go of your own ego and it's not about you, and you can focus just on the kids, it's about the kids, it makes it really easy. And that's a big thing, because a lot of coaches are still looking at, well, look what I did. Look what I did. Look, how good I was. Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? And when you let go of that and just work with the kids, we talked about this, David, how good the kids are now. You were talking about a little bit earlier that you don't know if you would have been able to compete with some of these kids. But
I didn't say that. I do think
okay.
I just would have to have been better.
We're going to let go of the ego for a minute, David. But anyway.
I just want to make sure I was quiet.
All right. I got you. But what I'm saying is that these kids have transformed. And I know Tom Brands and Terry Brands, when Spencer Lee came in, saying he is so far ahead of me when I was a freshman in college, or when I was a sophomore in college, he would have kicked my ass. These kids can wrestle from all these different positions, and they can go from one thing to another without even missing a beat. Back in the day, we weren't able to do that. You got in on a single, boy, that's what you had. And you're gonna fight and grind until you get it. These kids can go from a single to a double to a high crotch to a dump to a scoot. They can do all these things within a matter of 30 seconds and score. And it's just amazing to watch. The sport is getting better, and it's getting funner for the fans to see. So, I'm not going to say how great Iowa is in high school wrestling right now, because I think they've proven that they're up there with the elites. But the states, and I know you've said it a couple times, David, these states that are saying, well, we didn't send all of our best kids. You know, and that's true. Some of these states did not send all their best kids. Either did Iowa. And I think
nobody ever sends all their best kids.
that's right. So I mean, we had 2 kids that weren't on the team that I think would have won junior nationals at weights that we did not win it. So I mean, it could have been really ugly. And
pretty, depending on your point of view.
Yeah. So I mean, I just think high school wrestling in a whole is so much more advanced now, David, than it ever was. And I hope it continues. I really do.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw a couple storylines. I'm going to be selfish and just talk about, we ran the Michigan Border Brawl in March, and I got to give a big shout to Mario Flores. He really did an unbelievable job getting some of the best girls in the country that also happened to be in his club. And unlike some people that sat in a corner for 15 minutes and then claim they coached them for the rest of their life, we don't claim we coached any of these kids as the event organizer, but we're proud of our alumni. Just like Park Hill is proud of Cody Goodwin, what he's doing in the sport of wrestling now. Savannah Isaac, double Fargo champ. Sabrina Noss, double Fargo champ. At our event, Isaac wrestled Noss. That's how good of a match that we had. Eliana Bomarito I'm pretty sure she got O-dub. If she didn't, I don't know why she wouldn't have in junior freestyle girls. I'm going to miss girls, but Gigi Bragg, Cece Williams, Angelina Vargas, all these girls medaled. I would bet out of our meet on the girls side alone, there was at least 9 stop signs, big and little, so stop signs and coasters, but at least 5 stop signs, like the big ones. And, the development of girls wrestling becoming an affiliated, our sanctioned sport in these states is gigantic. The number of entries in the girls tournament, I think, was 992. Cody's, I know, will be more detailed on this, but I thought I saw that number from, am I in the ballpark from what I saw Jason Bryant post? Cody?
I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
So once I find it, I'll let you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Interrupt me that's fine. Like people would rather hear from you and Mark anyway. But but the numbers, like at the junior duels, the U16s went from 5 to 16 girls team. The other thing that I thought, at least one other story that stuck out to me, there's so many of them, are the Rainey brothers out of Kentucky. So I don't know who knew who these kids were beforehand, but them dudes made a lot of money this week for their families. So, because just like we say, like, hey, Iowa's a traditionally good state, Illinois is a traditionally good state, Pennsylvania's a very good, traditionally good state. Like, hey, if I get a Cody Goodwin, who's a 3-time state champion out of Pennsylvania and placed at Fargo, very good bet he's going to be a good college wrestler at whatever level. You take a kid out of Kentucky where there's very little depth. That's not a criticism. It's just a fact. The number of kids that wrestle, the number of kids that have proven Division I success. That's part of it too. Like if there are 100 kids from Kentucky that have won national titles, when I come in, people think, okay, well, if you were good from Kentucky, you'll be good. The Rainey brothers doubled up, right, Cody? They won. I saw them win. I know they both won Greco, and I know at least one of them won freestyle.
Yeah, I'm checking that here right now. But yeah, they were both very, very impressed. They wrestled 6 and 20, right? So Jaden doubled up. Jordan took 5th in freestyle in that stacked 120 bracket that Marcus Blaze won, and then there's Knox was in the finals, and all those PA kids were in it.
Oh, okay. But that's amazing.
Yeah, right. To be in the mix with all those dudes.
And the smaller one pinned Bassett.
The bigger one beat Bassett. Jordan Rainey.
The bigger one pinned him.
And he was beating him 10-7 too. So it's not like he
that's
caught
exactly
him, right? Yeah.
They were back and forth, but he was winning sort of the whole time, or within, like, he got the first couple takedowns. And am I right that Bo Nichols' dad is coaching these kids? I had a couple people send me that.
Maybe I wouldn't know that for sure, but
Somebody
those guys
smart
can scrap. I do know that.
Kids like to fight. So, Mark, you're watching. What storylines were most intriguing to you?
I guess to me, I was amazed by what Idaho did. When I look back after everything that happened, I'm looking at the brackets and I'm following kids that I know, obviously. And I get to the semis of 100 and I think it was 106, Cody. I think that's where Drew Ayala wrestled. And I go to the semis and I got 3 Idaho kids and Drew Ayala. And I'm thinking, what in the heck? And I go back and I'm looking, where did these kids come from? I mean, 3 from Idaho in the same weight, all in the semis, and Drew lost a heartbreaker right at the end. And I had talked to one of his coaches. I said, and I know the family really well. I mean, these are great, great people from Fort Dodge, obviously with Drake wrestling in Iowa and what Drake was able to accomplish. And Drake kind of had some of the same issues that Drew had, that when you get in on his legs, he's not real strong there. And that's something he's going to have to work at. And I talked to the coaches about that, and they said, we know, we're working on it. We're working on it. And because he gave up a late takedown to lose at state this year in the finals also, when a guy got in on his legs. And there's no reason to give your legs up with, less than 10 seconds left in the match, because he knows how to down block. He knows how to wrestle this way. So, but those are little things that can be fixed. But I was really impressed with just what the state of Idaho did, because that's something I wasn't prepared to see.
No, they were very, very impressive. And they're still junior freestyle and junior Greco. They're probably going to finish top 5 in both. I know for sure they finished 4th in junior freestyle and junior Greco. They're still going. They have at least 1, maybe 2 finalists. Kind of impressive. I'm with you. Idaho's not I remember, I think it was, I don't know 100% certain. Back when I was wrestling, this would have been 07, 08, 09. Not 100% certain, but there were a few Idaho kids that were good. But now there's quite a bunch. There's a ton of them. So they've been very impressive to watch over the last week or so.
Yeah. Shout out to my buddy, Chris Owen, who's coaching out there. But so Cody, so Mark, we talked about what would happen if you could pick a top 5 state in junior freestyle. How far would you have to have gone down the list to have put Idaho on the list?
Before this started?
Yeah.
Oh boy. I probably would have stopped after 25, and I don't think I would have mentioned them in 25. But then I don't follow Idaho wrestling either, David. I mean, obviously that's probably, a little bit out of my realm. When it gets that far away, I'm not sure. I would have picked Utah over Idaho just because Utah's, I think of Cale Sanderson coming from Utah, so he's going to be one of my top 25, So I think a lot in the past, not really what's going on in the present. That's probably a bad thing to do. But, and another thing, David, that kind of stood out for me, and, I love all college wrestling in the state of Iowa. I'm talking Division II, junior college, NAIA, obviously with Grandview.
And there's a ton of D3s up there too.
Yeah. Wartburg, Simpson, Coe, Cornell, but Loris. I don't want BV. But I guess something that shocked me is out of the 5 national champs at Fargo in the junior division, all 5 of them is signed with Iowa. So, I mean, the University of Iowa is getting, quite a stack of kids coming from this tournament. So they're not hurting, let's put it that way.
Is the Hill kid going to Iowa, the 220-pounder?
Yes.
So he and Franklin are both going there.
Yes.
And Keeter, who's not even there.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, so unless one of them figures out how to get to 197 and one of them gets down to 184, something's going to happen there, right?
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work out, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Because I think Keeter's going to end up being a heavyweight, David. I think he's just
no, I think so too. But that was
got that frame.
They wrestled that, right?
Yeah. So
there's a lot of
but-
220s that can make 197. There's not very many 220s that can make 184.
And when we were talking about these club teams, I think that's kind of a big thing too, David. These kids have become really close because they spend so much time together. And all of a sudden, one of them wants to go to Iowa. And I think that was Drake Ayala, who was a big part of this, Seabolt thing when it was getting going. And he had success at Fargo. He won 3 Fargo titles and one who's number one. And people kind of gravitated toward, Drake. And then all of a sudden, all the other Seabolt kids want to go to Iowa because Drake went to, and I'm not sure that's why they did it, but you see there's a, familiar person there. And yeah, I want to wrestle with Drake again. It was fun, over the last 4 years working out with him and watching how successful he was. And now I'm getting successful. I want to go there too. So that's part of the storyline. I think it really is.
Yeah, I think the other thing that, I saw was how many of these matches, and I'm going to say 2 things that sound almost contradictory. One, how many of these matches are close and could have gone either way, right? Like the Cody Merrill, Aiden Riggins final. I'm sorry, it was Nico Ruiz and Riggins ended up 15-8 after the challenge, and it was 12-11 Ruiz before the challenge.
Yep.
And so that's like your ultimate 4 + 4 - 4 8-point swing. But there's a ton of matches that feel like they're won or lost in one position or situation. Maybe like, hey, it's really close. And then not only did you get a takedown, but you got into a lace and scored 6 points and, went from losing by 3 to winning by 3. So, and then the other thing is, and I talked to a buddy of mine about this a couple of years ago, how many matches end up in tech falls? But that's because the tech falls 10 in freestyle and 8 in Greco versus 15. And the other thing is, like, if you're kicking my tail, there's no escape point for me. It's like takedown. That's if you suck on top or can't turn me. 5 takedowns is a tech. 5 takedowns in folk style is 10-5.
Yep.
So, hold on a second. Okay, I can't watch that anymore. So, the difference between, 10-5 and 10-0 is literally the match. So, that part's just, it's crazy, like how, and the other thing is, like, I shouldn't say there's no turn, because like that rebar, that reinforced tilt in folk style is a score where you can score multiple times, but you actually have to let it go and kind of try to trick the ref and go back and get it. Yep. Where a lace in a gut, you're taught, do not let it go. Score the points. Yep. Stay on board with that. So, any other final thoughts on Fargo or anything else? So we're recording this on Friday morning, so they're still finishing some Greco up. But anything else?
No. I think overall it was a lot of fun to watch. I think Flo did a phenomenal job. So we could see so many matches. No, I really enjoyed watching it. And I think shout out to the Iowa's cadet team, women's, winning it. Missouri getting second, obviously. This is kind of newer for the state of Iowa. And then I think they were 20th the year before, and they won it this year in the cadets. So it's going in the right direction. It's going to be fun to watch these young kids, these young ladies perform in the next few years when they get up into the junior division. Going to make a difference.
For sure. So speaking of Greco,
when were we speaking of Greco?
Well, we talked about winning.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we're talking about Iowa winning Greco.
True.
So, USA Wrestling, Ivan Ivanov took over, and since that move happened, Matt Linlin has resigned, Steve Frazier has retired, and prior to that, Mayab left. So we're going to see a ton of new blood in the Greco program, like 6 weeks prior to the World Championships and 2 years prior to the Olympics. So I can tell you one name that I don't think will be hired, and that's Spencer Mango. I was at Ryan Mango's wedding. It is now 6 days ago. And he said he's very happy with the World Cap athletic program and doing what they're doing. I guess WCAP, or World Class Athletic Program. So, and by the way, congratulations to Ryan Mango. I have never felt, I shouldn't say never, I felt incredibly unathletic. So at the reception, they're doing these dances, and they were some fraternity dances, and then his wife is of African descent. So there are these African dances, and like they changed out of their tuxedos into traditional garb. And I mean, I went up to him, and Ellis Coleman, there's a lot of wrestling people there. Coach Borelli from Stanford, now American, was there, and there's some dudes like, you know, like my dad can beat up your dad. Like this wedding party could beat up anybody else's wedding party if it came down to it. So, but I think that what's going to happen with USA Wrestling's Greco program is really interesting, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, you kind of worry that maybe that's going to affect us in the Worlds, but I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We have not been the strongest country in the world in Greco. Obviously, it's not our forte. And maybe getting new blood in there, David's going to help the Greco program itself. So I guess it's just going to kind of be a wait and see, you know, situation. But I don't have a problems with revamping the whole system and trying to improve it. I really don't, because we're not getting the results that, you know, America would want to get right now. We've got some great athletes, don't get me wrong, but it's got to get better.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and I mean, and I'll bang this drum one more time. Like, so we just sent another team overseas, an age group team, like Zan Fugit. He's on that team. I think it's the under 17s. We didn't even talk about Tunisia or Poland or conference realignment this week, because we want to wait and get Grant back on there, because I think he has some very, very insightful things to say about all that stuff. But our 17-year-olds, our 15-year-olds compete really well in the Pan Ams and well overseas at the World Championships in the Greco. We start getting killed in the 20s and the 23s and the senior level. And again, this is because when you go to college, you don't practice Greco. You don't really practice freestyle, but you practice a ton of folk style. And folk style is way more transferable to freestyle. I mean, you just practice them and then the spring and summer, I mean, you have to change your whole, literally your stance. I mean,
yep,
just fundamentally. So I think there's a lot of things there that are just super different. Jim Grunwald is a name that I heard floated around, and, you know, he's a guy like from close to my era. So it'll be interesting to see who comes in. I think Ivan was originally hired in the Gary Mayab position, which was like the Kevin Jackson equivalent position that James Green is now in. I feel like we're playing 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yep. Basically the developmental job, for people that don't know what that means. Like, that's the age group coach. Like, James Green goes with all these teams and runs the camps, and he's the overall head coach, works with Joe Russell on that stuff. So I think that it'll be interesting to see if Ivan stays in that role, or if Ivan becomes the head coach and then hire somebody else to do some of the other things. So
how happy do you think James Green is right now watching Fargo and watching the way these kids are performing, these age groups, even the cadets? I mean, he's got to be so excited to know that this is a perfect time for him to get this position, because we just continue to get better and better at all age groups. It's got to be a really good feeling for him.
Yeah, I mean, I know James. He's came on the show. Like, we're friendly. We're not friends. I mean, that's nobody's fault. Our paths just didn't cross. Like, Kevin Jackson and I are friends. And I think he probably feels the same way Kevin Jackson felt in that role, which is like the kids get better and better. I think KJ did a good job, which I'm sure James will do / is doing, because I know Kevin and James are friends, like saying, look, we need to be good in these positions. We need to be good in these situations. We need to know how to shelf the leg, how to stop the shelf, how to run the corner, how to get ourselves grounded, how to drive up through a guy when they're grounded. These very specific, short time defense, not getting caution in one, holding, and not just doing it, but here's some specificity on how to do that kind of stuff. And so, I would imagine, I mean, James is hugely likable and incredibly intelligent, and there's nobody around him that doesn't want him to succeed. Kevin Jackson is not one of those guys that wants the person following him to do worse than him. He's the opposite. He wants it to keep going up. Okay. So, I mean, he's a product of the USA Wrestling system. He helped escalate the USA Wrestling system, and he wants that to continue. And then obviously all the other people that are part of the infrastructure that, like the Joe Russells, the Bridge Benders, the Gary Abbotts, the Mike Claytons, everybody else involved with USA Wrestling want him to succeed. So but to be fair, like if Zan Fugit, just because I know him, if he goes and wins a world title this weekend, there's probably something James said that will help him. But, he's a product of where he is with that Nick's coaching staff and, those kind of things, and who he trains with in the 12 months of the year, his high school teammates, his summer teammates, his spring, this whole thing, his mother, his father. But our country is built, our wrestling system is built to be good at freestyle, so like, I mean, folk style wise, like, we love folk style, and, there's an argument to give up folk style and just convert full-time, but nobody ever says, let's convert full-time to Greco, like that. I've never heard that argument from anybody.
Nope.
And, the other sidebar of the folk style argument is it builds up into MMA, which is another career path for a lot of wrestlers, not just the guys you see at the very top of the food chain, but there's guys making a living. I got a guy that wrestled for me that didn't even start for us, that's fighting tomorrow morning on the prelims of the UFC. So, I mean, like, that's another path. So, the other thing that I think, and I know you're not on social media much, but I think this was like a good reset for me. Like you and me, I tell people we get to talk about wrestling sort of at the 50,000 foot view. Like we are literally supposed to talk about the best of the best. Like, we're not talking about some kid that took 8th. We're talking about double Fargo champs, team champs, all the, the best programs in the country, the world team, that's what we talk about, right? We talk about the winners. But there are a lot of people that are accomplishing goals and are improving their lives from participating in this tournament, from almost medaling, from taking 8th. I mean, somebody that takes 8th, they may not have to go work because their family can't afford for me even he or she to go to college. For the rest of their life, they're an All-American at the biggest tournament, certainly in America, maybe the world. And so there are multiple storylines that are we are not touching on, and it's not our job to. So we're not being remiss, but I encourage people to get on social and see as many of these. So-and-so didn't achieve her goal. So-and-so didn't achieve his goal of being a national champion, but they did this, and they're so proud of the people that helped them and appreciate them and everything else. And I think there's a lot to that. And I don't know anybody who started in wrestling that didn't get their tail kicked for a while, and there's kids that don't place in this tournament the first year and they come back and win it and things like that. Like there's a young lady named Bella Williams who wrestled in, and she's good. Like she was state champ out of Oklahoma. She beat a girl out of Missouri who was a state champ. And that girl from Missouri was 41-1, and her only loss was to Bella. Bella lost in the first round of junior duels. And I think she won 10 matches to take third.
Yeah.
And probably, I want to say this the right way, probably one of the coolest things about, like, when you saw the pictures of her face was beat up just like every other wrestler we've seen for 50 years. She just happens to be a female, but she did the same freaking grind that all of us did that went through a hard tournament like that over the course of multiple days. And she also medaled in cadet. So she wrestled God knows how many matches, probably 15 to 20 matches, made weight multiple times, wrestled most of her matches knowing she could not be the champion.
Yep.
And, so shout out to Bella and to Nathan, her father, and all the people that have poured themselves into her. But it's just, that's one of literally probably 100 storylines. Well, really more than that when you count all the All-Americans there, that are inspirational, that are important. That young lady grew this week. She was already really good, but she grew. And I think sometimes we forget, I have a lot of friends that don't know anything about wrestling, and they're like, what do you talk about on your shows? And they're like, well, do you ever talk about, like, they're like, well, this kid down the street did this. And I'm like, yeah, we can't talk about that. Like, people are not going to, well, I don't mean like people are not going to tune in on a national level to hear about that, but that's not great. It's just the reality of it's not great, right? Like these other stories should be getting some shine.
I know one thing, David, when I was coaching, I literally would go through state tournaments, and not just in Iowa, but in a lot of states, obviously, because I recruited all over the United States. And I would look for third place kids that I could recruit and get, because I think the hardest thing to do is to come back and get third, especially in big tournaments, because you've got to run the gauntlet. And that means you're not a quitter. You may get beat once in a while, but I know one thing: you're going to come back and wrestle hard in the wrestlebacks. And like all coaches say, well, it's not about our 3 champions we had. That's not how we won our national title. It's the kids in the wrestleback that came back and plays for us, and not kids down further, because that team doesn't get the team points now. That's important, and coaches actually look at that. So, kids, when you got a chance to get third place and you get third place, people notice. They really do.
Versus making the semis and sliding to 6th.
Yep.
I will say this, and I don't know if I've ever said this to Mark, but I remember the year that Mark's team won their national title, and it came down to the last match at heavyweight.
Yep.
And it was not just, well, if you had to win. The team that you were wrestling against, Terry Pack's team, was in basically whoever won that match was going to win the national title. If I remember correctly, it was Dean Taylor and Cain Velasquez. Is that correct?
And Dean Taylor beat Cain during the year once.
Okay. So this is as much drama as you can get. And Mark and Terry are very good friends, and Terry used to be on Mark's staff. And, I'm sure they wanted to beat each other's brains out, but if they couldn't win it, they'd want the other guy to win it. I think, is that all a fair sentence set up?
I think so.
Okay. So your team wins, your guy wins, Cain wins, and everybody's running around. And I remember this. I will never forget this. I remember you walking up to Paul Collum and holding his face. And I was close enough. And you go, I think he took 5th that year, but he had like 3 or 4 pins. He's really good with the 3/4 Nelson. And he goes, you said, we don't win this tournament without you. You know, and you just hugged him. I think you might even kissed him on the forehead, but like, nobody's ever won a national tournament with just frontside guys. You know, now you can look at the math and go, they could have won it without those backside guys, but those backside guys scoring points along the way literally allowed the frontside guys, if they're thinking about that, to wrestle free or whatever else. So anyway, shout out to Paul Collum, who won it the next year. His brother Matt is coaching up at Loyola. I think they had 5 Fargo All-Americans this year. So
Good for them.
They're on the come up. Congratulations to him, to that coaching tree there, and to Bella, and to all the people that laid it on the line this week. Even the 0-2ers. There's a special energy about Fargo. I'm going to go back next year, and I think I might, if I can figure it out, I might just do like a blog, like a video, like, you know, I think there's a lot of really cool, like Adam Engel's doing a blog for USA Wrestling, and he's doing a great job. But I think there's probably a second sort of blog to be done. And I don't really want to write. I'm not like, my mom's an English teacher, so I can write, but I'd much rather, like, you know, maybe just do a video. Well, I don't want people to think like I can. I would rather just like sort of do a video summary of what's going on and things like that.
Sure.
So anyway, all right. For Cody and Mark, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll see you all next week.